Welcome to Techietalkee. Hello friends. In this video, I'm going to explain about the for loop in Python. Any Python program that we write will get executed from the first line till the last line and only once. Suppose we want to execute a command multiple times, then we need some kind of looping statements. I had already released a video on while loop where we check for a condition until the condition satisfies, we loop through a block of code. The other looping statement that we have is the for loop. And this is the syntax of the for loop. For, and then I'll give a variable which will store the value in string, range, list, tuple, dictionary, or set. This for loop can loop through the values in these sequence types. And in the for block, I can give the statements for execution. And we also have the break or the pass keyword, which is actually optional in the for block. The other optional block that we have is the else block. This else block will get executed after the for block executes completely. This is the flowchart for loop, and it will tell you how the for loop works. First, we initialize the variables, and then in the for block, we give the test expression. The expression can be string or list or tuple, as we saw in the previous slide. And till the expression evaluates to true, the for block executes, and it will keep looping through that expression, and it will retrieve the data one by one. Once the expression completely executes, then it will go to the else block. If we have given any else block in our code, then the else statements will get executed. If not, the program will stop the execution. I'll show you with an example on how the for loop works. Consider this example where I have a list containing the marks of 10 students. I'll have to check each and every mark and print pass or fail based on the pass criteria, say 40%. So for that, I'll have to loop through the mark list. For that, I'm going to use the for loop here. So I'll give for MRK. MRK is the variable which I'm going to use to store the list items one by one in mark list. And I'm referring to the mark list here. So before checking if the mark is a pass or a fail mark, we'll first try to print the marks. So I'm giving a print statement here. If I execute this code, I can see that all the marks get printed here. Now I'll have to add a condition to check if it is a pass or a fail mark. So for that, I'm going to use a if statement inside the for statement. If mark greater than or equal to 40, then print mark followed by pass, else mark followed by fail. Here I'm accessing the list item and I'm storing it in a variable. So I can use the variable name directly instead of referring to the list item with the index value. When I execute this code, I can see that the pass or the fail gets printed based on the criteria of the pass percentage. This is all about using the for loop in a list. Now, how do I use a for loop in a string? Let me show you with an example. Here I have str1, which is a variable, and it is going to hold the value Techietalkee. And what I'm trying to do here is that loop through the Techietalkee string and then print the characters one by one. So my for syntax would be for variable in, and I'll refer to the string. Then I'm going to print that particular variable. If I execute this code, I can see that the Techietalkee gets printed here. Here, character is not a reserved keyword. It is just a variable name. You can give whatever name you want here. Just make sure it is a meaningful name. I can also give char. Then print the string characters one by one. Next, how do I loop through a range of values? So for that, we can use the inbuilt function called range. Let me show you with an example on how the range works. In this example, I have given a variable num which is assigned to range of 10. So what is this range of 10? So it is going to give us the values from 0 till 9. So that is what is meant by range of 10. And then I'm using a for loop here to iterate through these range of values and then fetch the value. For I, so I is the variable name in num. So num is this variable where we have assigned it to hold the value of a range of values. And then I'm going to print the value of I. So when I execute this code, I can see that the values from 0 till 9 get printed here. This range is going to return me a sequence of numbers. The starting value of this particular range is going to be 0. And from 0, it will increment by 1 till 9. Suppose I want to print the values from 2 to 9 and not from 0 to 9. So in that case, I can give two parameters in this range inbuilt function. I'll give 2, 10. Now I can see that the values from 2 till 9 gets printed. Now consider this example where I want to print only the even numbers from 2 to 9. Now how do I do this? So I can use the same range function, but instead of the default increment by 1, I can specify the increment value as 2. Let's see how this code works. We can see that 2468 gets printed. So what happens is the range is going to return me the list of values from 2 till 9, but with an increment of 2. So first it will return 2, next 4, then 6 and then 8. We can use the same range function to print the values in the reverse order. So for that I can give range of 10, 1. But if I execute this code, I don't get any result. Why is that so? Because the starting value is 10, but the last value is 1. By default, the increment of range function is 1. But from 10, if we keep incrementing by 1, we'll never be able to reach 1 in the number line. So we'll have to do decrement in this case. So I'll give range of 10, 1, minus 1. So this will help in printing the values in descending order. From 10, because the starting value will always get printed, but ending value, whatever we give, will not get printed. Instead, the previous value gets printed. And that is how the range function works. Let's say I want to print the even numbers in the descending order. So instead of minus 1, I can give minus 2, thereby printing the even numbers between 10 and 1. Consider this example where I have a list called ALP, the short form of alphabets, and I have the alphabets from A till J. Now I want to print the values from A till J, but I want to print only the alternate values. Say A, then C, then E, and so on. So how do I print the alternate values? For that, I can use the same range function. I can give range of the starting value would be 0, and then I'll have to give the ending value. For that, I need to know the length of this particular list. So for that, I can use the len function where I'll get the len of this particular alphabet list. So it will be from 0 till the length of the alphabet list, and then I'm going to increment by 2. I need to print the values from this particular list. So I'll give print of list followed by this I, where I is going to indicate the index value in that particular list. So you can see here that the alternate values get printed. Now, if I want to print all the values, I can just give the increment to be 1, where I can see that all the values in the list gets printed. We can also use the break keyword in a for loop. And where exactly can we use the break keyword? When a particular criteria is satisfied and we don't want to proceed with that particular criteria, or we don't want to proceed with the for loop on that particular condition, then we can use the break keyword. Let me show you an example on that. Consider this code where I have the mark list of 10 students. But for a change, I'm going to have a negative mark here, which is minus 41, which is actually entered by mistake. And then I'm creating two other lists, which are pass list and fail list. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to check for the pass criteria, say 40%, and the mark greater than or equal to 40 will be moved to the pass list, and less than 40 will be moved to the fail list. And for that, I'm using a for loop here. So for MRK, which is a variable in mark list. And what is a mark list? It is going to hold the marks of 10 students. And I'm using a if condition here. If mark greater than or equal to 40, then I'm going to add values to the pass list. So how can I add values to this list? By using the append method. So I'll give pass list dot append of mark. And this mark is already holding the value of the list item. This for block is going to loop through the mark list. So now this pass list and fail list are going to have values in it. Next, I'm going to loop through the fail list using the for loop. So I'll give for val2, which is a variable in fail list. If val2 is less than 0, then I'll give a break, because I know for sure that if it is a negative number, it is entered there by mistake. If val2 is less than 0, then break. Break meaning this particular value will not be processed. So it will go to the next list item in the fail list, and then it will keep executing. And in this particular for loop, I've also given the else statement saying that printed the list of students who failed in their exam. And we know that the else will execute after the for loop completely executes. I have another for loop here which is going to loop through this particular pass list, and then it is going to print the values along with the message saying pass. And once after this for loop is completely executed, it is going to print a message saying printed the list of students who passed in their exam. Now let's execute this code and check the results. Here the results are all printed, and we are able to see only the pass marks here and the message saying printed the list of students who passed in their exam. But actually we have 10 marks in this particular mark list. So this negative mark, it got appended to the fail list. But we had a for loop for the fail list also to print the value and also to indicate that it is a fail mark. But why did that negative value not print here? Since it was a negative value, it stopped the execution on that particular value, and then it checked for the next list item, and then the execution went on. So that is the reason why the negative value was not printed here. Now, if we want to print that negative value, I'll simply comment this particular if condition. Let me execute this code and show you the result. So here I can see that minus 41 fail got printed, which means I was actually looping through this particular fail list also and printing the value there. And in my list, I had only one fail mark. So only one item got printed here. After that, the else block got executed, where it printed the message that printed the list of students who failed in that exam. So this is how we can use the break keyword to check for a condition and then break from that particular for loop. Next, let's look at the nested for loop, which is actually nothing but one for loop within the other for loop. That is, for each execution of the outer for loop, the inner for loop executes for the required number of times. Let me show you an example. In this example, I'm trying to print the multiplication table from 1 to 10. So for that, I'm using a nested for loop. And how does it work here? First, the outer for loop executes where the range is from 1 to 11, meaning it is from 1 to 10. So the value 1 will get stored in the variable x, and then we have another for loop here, which is the inner for loop, and this inner for loop is going to again loop for a range of values from 1 till 10. So this y is going to hold the value of 1 during the first iteration. Now the value of x is 1 and y is 1. And what am I doing here? I'm giving print 1 into 1 equal to the multiplication value, which is 1 into 1. Let me execute this code and show you. So here we can see that the multiplication table got printed. So during the first iteration of the inner for loop, 1 into 1 equal to 1 got printed. So next the value would be 2, which will be assigned to y. And this for loop will execute now, which is the inner for loop. So it will be print x is going to be the same, which is 1. So 1 into, now the value of y is 2. So 1 into 2 equal to 2. Next, the inner for loop is going to execute where y is going to hold the value of 3. The print message is now going to print 1 into 3, which is equal to 1 into 3, which is 3. So this inner for loop keeps executing till the value of y becomes 10. So after that, the control moves to the outer for loop where the value of x becomes 2. So now the value of x is 2. Again, the inner for loop executes. And what happens is, it is again going to loop through the values from 1 to 10. So now the value of x is 2, but the value of y is again going to be 1. So what will get printed here? The two tables, which is 2 into 1 equal to 2. And this keeps going on. This is how we can use the nested for loops in Python. Hey guys, hope you now understood how to use for loops in Python and the syntax of it. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any queries, you can reach out to me at techietalkee@gmail.com. Happy learning and have a great day.